Good morning, UPBOptionMillionaires.com. Tuesday, April 14th, 20 minutes before the market is going to open for trade because the S&P 500 futures are pulling back, continuing their decline from just after the opening bell yesterday. We had a big rally, pulled back into the close, a little bit of a bounce overnight, and then European markets open, continue to the downside, consolidating, put in a nice bear flag, and we're continuing out of it. It looks like we're going to see further weakness today. I would look for support here at previous levels from last week before we can start really thinking about looking for a rally to new record highs. If you pull back from a longer term daily chart, you can see we're kind of gyrating around here. We could stop really at the midpoint as prices start to really come together before we vault up to record highs. The US dollar index is pulling back on some data this morning. You can see the move up, briefly hit 100 overnight, is pulling back, but again, looks like a beautiful pattern here that's going to break to the upside. The bond market, well bid. Look at the 30-year bond treasuries. Just a strong move this morning, up almost 1%. Crude oil remains something to watch as we start to bottom, possibly putting in a W bottom of sorts. We'll see as crude oil is up almost 1%. I think as the US dollar index starts to rally and head up to new 12-plus year highs, that's going to weigh on crude oil, but that remains to be seen. And let's look at gold futures. Gold futures hit their lows a little bit ago, since reversed course as the US dollar has weakened. Gold futures down almost 1%, recovering those losses in a flash here, it seems. And we could see a positive move for gold this morning if this trend continues. So let's look at some charts this morning. We have earnings. JP Morgan Chase out with earnings. Was up over 63. It's only about 60 cents away now from a new all-time record high for JP Morgan Chase, beat by a couple pennies there. Wells Fargo is lower post-earnings. Had an initial move to the upside. Is now about 70 cents lower. We have earnings after the bell, I believe today. Intel, and I'll get into the chart for that. You can see it looks to open lower this morning. Let's pull up a chart for Dunkin' Brands, Dunkin' Donuts. You can see it moving up. I brought this chart up last week or the week before. It was at 47 and change. It's getting right up against long-term trend line. Resistance, a break above that will send it up to new record highs up in the mid-50s there for Dunkin' Donuts. So keep an eye on that. Another trend line to watch for Google. Tried to break over the 550 level yesterday, was up over it briefly, pulled back below it, and I think it's setting up for downside. We have earnings coming out soon, so I think the earnings report's going to help make it move wherever it's going to move, which I think right now is to the downside. Look, Zillow right now is halted. Zillow is halted. Earnings outlook, revenue much lower than expected, and you can see this chart. Once it broke through this long-term trend line with a big red candle, down yesterday almost 5%, I think it's going to continue to the downside. We can see it down to the late 2012 lows, down in the 40s and 50s here. So there could be continued downside weakness. It's been really a bloodbath since hitting its highs in the middle of 2014. A couple bounces along the way, but you can see it's starting to really accelerate to the downside. And had a bounce pre-market up to 95. It closed at 92, 94. This could get pretty ugly here today. Let's look at TLT, the 20-year bond treasury ETF. You can see it's getting up near the long-term trend line here. This morning, up almost 1%. We break through this. New record highs on TLT are coming. I'm in the camp. I think it's going to pull back, but that's something that is tough to see this morning as bonds are well bid. Let's look. We have earnings this week from SanDisk. SanDisk continues to break off its lows. It hit it was just a couple weeks ago, and if you pull in a little closer, we're looking for the two different gaps to get filled in this name here and move possibly back over $100 sometime this year. You can see the move up. I'd at least expect this gap to get filled on earnings. So I'm kind of bullish heading into the earnings report. I'll probably buy a couple out of the money calls. American Express earnings late this week. I like a move back up into the low to mid 80s. And then let's look at another earnings report we have this week would be Netflix, which has been really breaking out to the upside. And you can see it's coming up almost near all-time record highs here. Pretty close yesterday. This morning, another analyst came out, raised the price target, so we're getting up pre-market up near this long-term trend line resistance. If we break out of it, we could be over $500 before the earnings report comes out on Wednesday. That's pretty amazing. Apple's been pulling back. Again, remains above this long-term trend line. The consolidation here, this broadening descending wedge, looking for a move up over 130. This morning, I believe Apple's up a little bit in spite of the weakness we're seeing for the S&P 500. Let's look at a couple other stocks, and then we'll call it a day. Yelp. Yelp remains below long-term trend line support, trying to get its way above it. It can get back over the $50 level. this gap here that was the February decline will get filled and will be up in the mid to upper 50s. I sound like a weatherman. The mid to upper 50s with a slight chance of rain and a little drizzle. All right, UPB, I guess we'll end it there. Once I start getting into the weather, we'll look at the NASDAQ, the QQQ. Again, broke the broadening descending wedge this time last year. To the upside, consolidated in this channel again, consolidating. That's what it looks like to me. So yeah, we get a little bit of a pullback, but I still think prices are heading higher. Small cap led the way yesterday in spite of the weakness for the NASDAQ, S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average. Small caps continue to perform, as did the biotech index. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. I'll see you in the chat room at optionmillionaires.com. Everyone have a great trading session. Goodbye.